Hi, welcome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the building blocks of immunity. My name is Shelley Swap. I'm a clinical herbalist, and I have been studying herbal medicine and ancient diets for, gosh, going on 15 years now. And I am hoping to bring a little bit of information and some comfort to you as you are navigating some of these really challenging circumstances that we find ourselves in here throughout the country and throughout the world. So let me tell you a little bit of my story. When I first started to discover the importance of nutrition in building immunity was when I had really young children, and they were struggling with all sorts of different things that really Western medicine didn't have answers for. We tried all the traditional Western medicine approaches, and they weren't giving us really great results. In fact, sometimes we were getting some pretty bad side effects from some of the medication. And it wasn't until I met a doctor who, at the time, they called themselves DAN doctors. I don't think they call themselves that anymore, but they were called DAN, standing for Defeat Autism Now. And they specialized in a lot of research that was coming out in the late 90s and early 2000s that it was beginning to show this link between nutrition and nutritional deficiencies and the rates of autism. And so he started us on a pretty, like, pulling a lot of things out of our diet, getting rid of the processed foods, getting rid of the food coloring, getting rid of the nitrates, getting rid of the preservatives. And then he started us on a lot of supplements, my kids on a ton of supplements, and myself also. But we had 4 young kids under the age of, I think, 8, and we were not in a position to continually be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars every month on supplements. It was getting to be really expensive, and as I was researching to keep up with this doctor, realizing that these nutrients should be in our food. And so I approached him and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And he said, I really don't have the training in nutrition. I know what the supplements do, but as far as applying that in a nutritional sense, I just don't. And that kind of lit a fire underneath me to find somebody who did, or become that person if I could. And so I began, and that really started my research and my understanding as to how nutrition plays into so many pieces of our puzzle. And as we started to make the changes that I was learning about through all of the education that I was getting and the resources we were being introduced to, we not only started to see a benefit in our children's ability to concentrate and in some of the other things that they were struggling with cognitively, but we saw a huge benefit in their ability to stay well longer. Like, I remember at one point going, oh my goodness, nobody's been sick in months. Or, we'd only been sick, or somebody did get sick, and I thought, oh my goodness, we haven't had a sickness for so long. And while keeping in mind that children between the ages of like 2 and 5, healthy kids get almost 15 colds a year. So that is more than one a month. So it's not uncommon for kids to get colds on a regular basis as they're building their immune system. But what's uncommon is for kids to get really, really sick and end up in the hospital needing, all sorts of breathing treatments and continually just like the lethargy and all the slow growth and those types of things that we see in a lot of these kids that are struggling. So I'm getting beyond myself right now. We're just going to get to the point, but I wanted to kind of give you a background as to why this is something that is so near and dear to my heart, and to help you understand that the immunity is more than just taking the something right now, because there's a virus in the air, because it's cold and flu season. It's really about rebuilding your system and replenishing your system from the inside out, and giving it every opportunity to be well, because the body really does want to be well on its own. So what can we do to stay well? Really essential nutrients and the foods that provide them are what we should be using, all of us, in order to create a long, sustainable pathway to health. We've definitely gotten away from that, which is really unfortunate. Maybe you've seen this before, but it is a quote from Thomas Edison. And he says, the doctor of the future will give no medication, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. And Thomas Edison, this is the future Thomas Edison was hoping that we would see that in, and unfortunately we're not living quite to the place that he had hoped that we would, and that I think all of us would like to be at. But we really can take the opportunity now to learn from our past mistakes and to look back at ancient cultures and make the pivots that we need to right now in order to prevent disease. So standing on the shoulders of giants, you've heard that term before. Well, it applies here as well. And looking at the wisdom through the ages, because there are so many things that we have sacrificed in our modern world in an effort to find ways to be more profitable, to be more convenient, and to make things easier. But unfortunately, the price that we've paid for that is our health. So many what we would call first world diseases or preventable diseases are ravaging our country. And these things could totally be prevented if we would look back at the wisdom that we've been taught over the ages. Science tells us that our very cells require nutrients to work effectively, but long before our ancestors even knew about cells, they knew how essential these foods were and carefully handed down recipes and food rituals from basically from one mother to a child, to the next child, to the families in order to keep them well. So let's talk some numbers. Let's talk some actual phytonutrients and some numbers. So zinc, about 35 to 40% of Americans over the age of 60 are deficient. I don't have data on younger generations, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are also in the similar category, or even more so, as we have such a picky generation of eaters, and coming from parents who are not necessarily eating whole foods as well. But PubMed has a study where they went and looked at kind of a longitudinal study where they looked at a number of different studies that were done on zinc, and they found that the beneficial therapeutic response of zinc supplementation was shown to improve diarrhea in children, chronic hepatitis, leprosy, tuberculosis, improve pneumonia, lower respiratory tract infections, common colds, and even things as decreasing the incidence of infections in the elderly, and also decreasing the incidence of respiratory tract infections in children. So for those of you whose kids really are always feeling like they're always coughing and they're always sick, zinc is something to consider. And then we're all looking at a potentially really destructive and deadly respiratory infection right now, and zinc is something that is worth considering boosting in your diet and possibly in your supplementation as well. Zinc supplementation is effective at decreasing oxidative stress and generating inflammatory cytokines. And if you've kept up with any of the information that's out there right now, a cytokine storm is a real concern. That's where we're seeing people lose their lives really quickly, is when a cytokine storm develops. And zinc is shown to help decrease the chances of that happening. So having enough zinc on board. Zinc isn't something that is in everything, so being thoughtful about the food choices. So shellfish are a great source of zinc. So oysters, mussels, even shrimp, those types of things. Pasture-raised beef and poultry, so well cared for animals. We're not talking factory farm animals, we're talking animals that come from a place where they've been able to have access to green grass and bugs and mud and all those wonderful things that they're supposed to have, is where we see the higher sources of zinc. And then mushrooms, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Almonds, almond milk can be a good source if it's not been highly processed. Lots of nuts, lots of legumes and beans and things like that can be a great food source of zinc. So you have a lot of things to choose from and help boost that in your diet. Supplementing, so there's 3 different main types that you're going to find on the market. Zinc acetate is the one that you're going to look for if you're working on boosting immunity and reducing your chances of getting the common cold, improving your chances of having a less severe respiratory infection. Lozenges are going to work a lot better than anything else that's out there. It's easier for your body to absorb. It doesn't have to go through the GI system. It's not going to upset your tummy as much. 5 to 10 milligrams a day but you can take up to 45 milligrams a day for short periods of time and be just fine. Understand, just keep in mind that zinc can be nauseating. So never take zinc on an empty stomach. Once you do, you'll never do that again. It's really can be remarkably nauseating. So it needs to be taken with something else. So zinc carnosine is another form, and I use it quite widely in my practice. It's really effective in helping to repair gut health, improving chronic diarrhea, and reducing inflammation of the gut. It can be taken at 20 milligrams a day or even higher doses. I have people that I work with on even higher doses for short periods of time when they're under the guidance of a professional, because it does such a good job of helping to heal that gut lining. And as we'll talk about later, that gut lining is really important for your immune system to function properly. And then zinc picolinate is another highly absorbable form of zinc that you can find. It's generally used by athletes. You may find it in some of the sports drinks or powders and things that are out there. And it's particularly helpful for people who tend to sweat a lot and lose zinc that way. And so it's about 15 milligrams a day is where we see good results. Vitamin C, is it worth the hype? Yes. Can I just say yes? It absolutely is worth the hype. And there's over 150 studies that involve, I think, something like 11,000, almost 12,000 people, show that vitamin C supports many of the immune processes in the body. It fights a variety of pathogens, so different viruses and infections. It helps to actually fight those on the spot and helps to keep the respiratory passages healthy. Those are all things we want to be paying attention to right now. And 21 million Americans are deficient in vitamin C, which increases their risk of infection and disease. Food sources. One of my favorite is red peppers. So they're easy to come by. You can add them to lots of different dishes. I've got a great recipe for you in my download that shows you how to make eggs inside of a red pepper, or a red pepper egg and kale scramble. Oops, look at that. Oysters mussel. So nope, sorry, red peppers. Citrus fruit. They're really well known for their content of vitamin C, but it's not necessarily oranges. Oranges and lemons are good sources, but grapefruit is a fantastic source. Strawberries, if you can get yourself a cup of strawberries, is a great source. Kiwis, other berries, all really good sources. Cherries of vitamin C, and then leafy greens. So spinach, parsley, kale, all of these you want to cook, or at least kind of warm and wilt, because that makes all of these minerals a lot more, and vitamins a lot more accessible for us. We have a hard time breaking them down when they're eaten raw. But don't forget any of these, and these are all easy things to add in your diet throughout the day and into all sorts of different dishes. Supplementing vitamin C, and I do think vitamin C supplementation is wise, especially in a situation where you are concerned about being exposed to something, or have been exposed, or when you are getting sick. So ascorbic acid is one of the most common forms, and most of the research that's been done has shown that ascorbic acid works really well. It's the least expensive, it's highly absorbable, and so it's what's usually recommended for people to use. You can find it in liquids, in tablets, in lozenges, and suppositories. I really prefer liquids at our house. We have used liquid for years, and then we can add other things with it as well. It's highly absorbable. You can feel the benefit really quickly, and I can get it in. I can throw it in a tea or something for somebody who's really sick, and continue to get it down them if they're struggling to swallow something. Lozenges are great as well. Tablets that dissolve. What you want to stay away from is capsules, things that are going to be a little bit harder for your body to break down, because you're just not going to be able to access that vitamin C as quickly. So at 2,000 milligrams a day is about where we recommend people for prevention. But if you do get sick, you want to start taking vitamin C about every 2 hours at the first sign of any symptoms, and continue doing that until you hit bowel tolerance. And bowel tolerance is where you start to get that grumbling tummy and some loose stools, and then you know that you've hit bowel tolerance, and that's when you stop taking vitamin C. Some people have a really high tolerance for vitamin C when they get sick, so just don't be surprised if you can keep taking it. But getting those bowels moving is really important in helping to remove toxins from your body. So that is something to keep in mind and something to reach for. And that's, another reason that we do a lot of the liquids at our house, because it's easier to do larger doses. But, tablets can work well, and so can lozenges. Sodium or calcium ascorbate is another way that you'll see it. You'll see it in a lot of those little powdery drinks. Oh my goodness, I did a really bad job of editing that. I'll have to go back and see what I meant to put there. I apologize. Not as readily absorbed as ascorbic acid, and you'll find ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids and other things, and they seem to be equally absorbed, although the benefits seem to be longer lasting with some of these other things that you see added with them, the bioflavonoids and some of the other herbs. You may have heard of ester C or liposomal vitamin C. Ester C has been shown to improve vitamin C, the amount of vitamin C that stays in your blood for about 24 hours after the administration. So within the first 24 hours, the numbers seem to be pretty similar between ascorbic acid and ester. It's just that when we get beyond that 24-hour period, the ester C seems to have be able to stay in the bloodstream longer. It doesn't break down as easily. And then liposomal actually improves the amount that's in circulation in your body. So it does have some benefits in that realm as well. It is definitely going to be more expensive. So just being able to, keep in mind what's going to be best for your budget and what you can make sure that you have on hand and in the adequate amount that you can reach for it if you need to, if somebody gets sick, is important. So they're all good options. Vitamin D, sunshine vitamin. 75% of all Americans of all ages are deficient. You'll see I've noticed I've referenced some of the studies down here on the slides. Why is this important? Why is it such a big deal that so many people are low in this vitamin? It's almost, I think, from the research I'm seeing, is more considered a signaling hormone as much as it is a vitamin. But vitamin D helps modulate the innate and adaptive immune responses. So the ones that we have embedded to help us prevent autoimmune disease, and then adaptive ones that adapt when we get in a situation where we're exposed to something, are both really, really crucial for vitamin D to be on board in order for them to work well. Deficiency in vitamin D is associated with increased autoimmunity as well as an increased susceptibility to infection. So getting that vitamin D is crucial. And if you aren't a spot where you can go outside and get sunshine regularly, then food sources are really helpful, and then supplementation is really helpful. But that sunshine on your skin is always the preferred way. First thing in the morning, around sunrise, last thing in the evening, just about sunset, and then middle of the day sun, all are really beneficial for different reasons, for vitamin C, for that ultraviolet infrared radiation that we want to be getting, and then also to help reset our cortisol system as well. Food sources of vitamin D, pasture-raised eggs. Those brilliantly orange egg yolks you see that come from a chicken that's had access to weeds and grass and bugs and sunshine. Those are the ones that have a higher amount of vitamin D, a higher amount of vitamin A, really going to be a lot more beneficial to you than ones that are not. Obviously, we don't always have access to those things, but if you do, they're worth the extra effort. Wild-caught salmon, cod, herring, and sardines, all wonderful sources of vitamin D. You want to make sure you check with the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch. Make sure you're getting the types of fish that are being sustainably harvested and that are not showing up with high levels of different metals in them. And the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch, you can get them online. They always have things updating, so you can see what's safe and what's got that green light, and what's yellow, something you should eat in moderation, and then what you need to really avoid as far as things that are either in danger of being exploited too heavily, or that are coming up with lots of different heavy metals in them. So those are good things to know about. But getting fish in your diet twice a week, if you are fortunate enough to be in a position to do that, can make a world of difference in your immunity, in your vitamin D levels, in your cognitive function, in your blood pressure. The list just goes on and on. So even things like what trout here in landlocked areas are great sources as well. And then mushrooms. Mushrooms, again, are showing up. They are a phenomenal source of vitamin D, a great source of zinc, great source of selenium, which we're not going to talk about specifically in this video, but selenium is another player that we're seeing is helping to improve people's ability to respond to this coronavirus, and is also really essential for anyone who's struggling with low thyroid function or any sort of hormone function. Selenium and vitamin D go hand in hand. And so we see that come together in mushrooms, both mushrooms that we use for culinary purposes and for medicinal mushrooms like reishi and turkey tail and the many amazing mushrooms that are out there. Like Host Defense has got some great products as well if you're able to get your hands on those. So we're just going to talk briefly about a couple of things, both garlic. It's an herb that's been around for a long time and has a very long traditional use. And in times of plague, in times of sickness, colds, flus, those types of things, it's antiviral. It's been shown to help boost the immune system. We don't have any real substantial evidence showing that it's super effective against coronavirus right now, but we don't have any evidence to say that it's not. And we do have a long-standing tradition of it being used in lots of different situations over centuries where people have been faced with these really scary pandemic types of diseases. So worth adding to your diet on a regular rotation. And then, you know, if you're that, have you ever used that as a sore throat remedy when you just start crunching on it? If you can handle the bad breath for the day, can really be a helper to get that, to nip that in the bud. And then probiotics. So if you are wondering, are probiotics worth their money? A good probiotic absolutely is. And if you've got any sort of gut issues at all, having a good probiotic on board can make a world of difference. In my world, a good probiotic, there's a small number of them that I really trust. Just Thrive is a company that is available to the public. They are the private label, or their practitioner label is Microbiome Labs, and they have done some phenomenal research with the National Institute of Health with their particular strains that they have encapsulated. They use spores, so those are the ones that go in and help to really seed and repopulate the gut, not just, and that have been shown to make it through the stomach acids and survive all the way through into the areas that need to be repopulated. And not only repopulate, but help to heal that leaky gut, that inflamed gut, the thinning of the lining of the gut, which is where we see a lot of reactivity, a lot of food reactions starting to happen when that lining gets thinned and inflamed. And adding probiotics can be really beneficial. Obviously, if you're in a situation where you're suffering from ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or celiac or something, you'd want to make sure that you have some guidance from a professional on board to help you do that, because there's some other things, some other herbs, and probably some herbs you would want to add and some foods you'd want to avoid in order to start getting that gut to heal. But for someone who is looking for a way to help improve their immune system quickly, a good probiotic is a really good place to start, because so much of our immune system is modulated in the gut. And not only does it improve our immune response, but it also helps improve our ability to absorb those nutrients that we've talked about already today, and make them more readily available in our body, so that we're not doing ourselves a disservice by going to the effort of making good food and then not being able to absorb it. So if you are interested in working with me, I do have another session of the Exhausted Women's Revolution starting, and I can spell. I apologize. I clearly did not pay attention to this. I've been paying attention to someone else homeschooling today, so you can tell I haven't been paying attention to my own work. But the Exhausted Women's Revolution will be starting up again soon. I have a wait list that's starting. If you're interested, you can pop me an email at shelly@vintageherbals.com. I've got my phone number on here, and then you can find me on all my social media channels. Just my name, Shelly Swap, both on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. If you have, and on YouTube. So if you're interested in getting some more information, I would love to be a resource for you at this time. So take care of your families, stay well, and I hope you have found this to be really helpful.